Back at it again. College basketball heat check, season 2, episode 1. So excited! It's only right to start episode 1 with the defending national champs from last year. So excited about our guest today. I don't think many people get a chance to really get to hear his voice or know as much about him. So we're thrilled about having Coach in today, and I'll let Eli introduce.
Yeah, I mean it's a honor spending the first episode of the new season with the defending champs, as you said, and we're really pleased today to welcome John Jakus, the Baylor assistant, to the show today. Obviously, we know what Baylor did last season, and it's great to get some insight on what this year's team looks like.
Yeah, and we'll bring Coach in the studio. Coach, how are you doing today?
Good. How you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to have you, Coach. I'm gonna let Eli tip it off. He's gonna lead the way. I'm gonna give him an ISO and come back in, and we'll share the rock a little bit.
All right, that sounds good.
Yeah, so first off, national title winning season last year. You've been alongside some wonderful head coaches, both Mark Few and Scott Drew. I think just to start, what was last season like? What was the journey of competing during this unusual COVID season and making sure that you guys have maintained this focus during an unusual year? And how did this all come to be to winning the national title?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Eli. And I think something that was special about last year is that we almost got to like run it back. The guys, Mark Maceo, Jared, and Davion, they didn't get to play in the NCAA tournament the year prior. And if they did, I don't know if we would have got them for 2 years. So you end up getting a third year with that group of guys who were unbelievable the year before, had won 23 games in a row, or a 1 seed if we would have played the tournament. And usually when you have that kind of success, everybody goes. But because of the absence of the NCAA tournament, you get 12 more months with not only wonderful players, but really great people that changed our program and really helped us grow, not just our basketball side or flesh out our analytics or establish, how we're going to play long term, but really changed our culture. And when you get to do something like win a national championship with people you love, and then you get an extra year with them, not just as a staff, but just in your individual relationships, that's something that I'll never forget. Those guys changed our life. And I don't know that anybody deserves a national championship. I worked at Gonzaga, and Mark and those guys are my friends, and those are people that I love. But I do think, and I'm sure they think their guys deserved one, especially with the way they played. But in our hearts, that group coming back to get one in some ways deserved it in a really special and unique way. And not just how they handled the basketball piece, but then the fact that they could get through the ups and downs and 3 pauses and even playing bad coming out of the third pause. I thought the maturity was really special. And then we just got firing on all cylinders at the right time. And so much of the tournament is just about that.
Well, you mentioned culture in there and also overcoming those 3 pauses that it was a huge distraction, a huge obstacle for a lot of teams throughout the season, and teams reacted to it differently. What was it within your staff that you were able to do to continue to connect with the players and making sure that they're focused and still having the aspirations of the goal of winning the national title?
Yeah, I think Scott Drew did an awesome job. And at the end of the day, sometimes people want to take credit for things, but you go the way your captain goes. And I think Scott, as he's gotten older, and the fact that he's been head coach now for 20 years at Baylor, there's this consistency that he has. He becomes more and more uncomfortable with who he is, not just as a coach, but as a person. And having those guys for 2 years, I think it was championship or bust for us. I also think the joy culture, the Jesus, others, and yourself thing with Scott is real. And that kind of permeated itself through the players. And then I think when we did hit pauses, we had guys that came back only to win the championship. So the pauses didn't freak them out. It was just this thing we had to get to, or have to go through to get to the end. And Scott, I thought, handled the pauses as well as he handled the games. And then it's just our job to come alongside him and make sure that we've got one message, and that message is consistent. And then we just get better every day, 1% better, we like to say. So I think Scott just did a wonderful job. And, you get credit for coaching on TV, but most of your coaching is done in secret. Most player development is done when no one's watching. And I think we separate ourselves in the dark, is what we like to say. When no one else is looking, we like to be the most special. And those pauses were us in the dark for 10 to 14 days at a time. And I think because we have that mindset about how great you need to be when no one's watching, those 3 pauses in the end maybe even helped us down the stretch.
Yeah, I love that you said that, Coach. I've actually been intrigued with what does go on in the dark there that you can share, because I think you guys don't. I think you don't get the credit all the time, even though you're still having the success. You've had a national championship now. I think we talked about it on the phone. 62-6, I believe, in 3 regular seasons in a row. Unbelievable success. But it still feels like the Bears are underrated. It's like the next year happens and people are talking about Kansas and Texas and OU, and all those teams deserve their recognition too. But I think there's something there that does happen behind closed doors when no one's around, as far as some of the investment and cultural things about the culture of joy, Jesus, others, and yourself. So talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind, that you can share and that you feel comfortable.
Yeah, I think that we're a relationship-based program, and no matter what you say, that's at the core of what we do. Whether it's taking guys out to eat, whether it's the way we watch film, whether it's the way we interact with our GAs or our players, the way the program is built, it's built based on relationships. And the relationship is set up in a way where the most important thing we do is we love our players. And love sometimes is tough love, but often it's just having a plan and then both parties agreeing on the plan. And the hardest thing today in our culture with all the transferring and the way college basketball is headed and the way people want things so fast, it's just difficult to get kids to stay still and actually allow the staff to do the player development. So if we can't love the kids enough for them to stay at Baylor for 1, 2, 3, 4 years, then you never get to do player development. And the heart of every coach on our staff is that we want to be good coaches. And coaching isn't necessarily always who the head coach is. It's can we help players get better? And we're passionate about the player development thing. And at the same time, we know we only get so many hours a week with them. That 20-hour thing is real, and there's a cap. And so the players got to work when we're not around. And I think that comes just we treat our recruiting more like an NBA draft than we ever have. So if you love your guys and they don't leave, you care a bunch about player development. And then flowing out of player development, you're picking the kids that fit who you are before they get here. That's a Scott Drew kid. That's somebody we can coach. That's somebody that won't leave when things get hard. That's somebody who loves us as much as we love them. They're proud to be at Baylor. They think Baylor can be a blue blood. Then you're at this place where you get to critique each other and get better and get after it and really fix some things without hurting feelings. And kids are more sensitive now than they've ever been. And if you can fix things without hurting feelings, then you can really grow. And we're just dead set on making sure as a staff, we bring kids in that will let us get them better. And in turn, they get us better.
Yeah, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, I got a little excited there. Didn't want to interrupt
You're
you.
good.
Yeah, I'll take one more before I pass it to Eli, Coach. Tell us about your story prior to Baylor and how you got connected to Baylor, because some of that winning that's happened, not because of you, but you and Coach Brooks came on in a time together at the same time, if I'm not mistaken, the same offseason. Is that correct?
No, he came a year before me. He came when Grant McCasland took the North Texas job, and then I came when Paul Mills got the Oral Roberts job. So
That's right.
in some ways we came together, but it was, I think we view each other that way because of our friendship. But yeah, he was here that 1 year prior. I was at Gonzaga at the time.
Yeah, this tree of head coaches, this success that's happened no matter who is there. But talk about your background, and then what was it like playing that game against a place that you used to work at?
Yeah, my background, I started working with an organization called Athletes in Action. It's a faith-based Christian organization. And through them, I took trips and coached internationally. And then eventually my family and I moved overseas and I coached professionally full-time. And then the short version of that is we got 3 kids, and our second child, our son, Cal, was diagnosed with autism. So we moved back from coaching professionally overseas, spent 2 years on Baylor's campus, kind of hanging out and trying to help him with his autism. Yeah. After our time here, there was an opening at Gonzaga, and I was because of my ties overseas and relationship that Grant McCaslin had with Tommy Lloyd. They had an opening, and I ended up spending 3 years there, and that was 3 incredible years.
Yeah.
My time there, I'm super thankful for the fact that Mark and Tommy gave me that chance, was life-changing, and they become more than just mentors. They're friends, and friends for life. And then when Paul left, Scott gave me a call and asked, and been here ever since. And obviously, it was a little bit odd to play them in a national championship, but the way that tournament works, you don't get to pick who you play in that final game.
No doubt.
And I wouldn't have preferred it was them, but it almost felt like it was destiny, because you just don't get college basketball where the 2 best teams the whole year. Rarely do they end up in the final game. That tournament
Very
is so
rarely.
crazy. And so the fact that it ended that way was pretty unique. And, scouting your old team and coaching against your friends.
Yeah.
It was awkward in the beginning. At the end of the game, kind of when you knew you're going to win, I sat down for a second, said a little prayer because I didn't want to go shake their hands. But, Mark gave me a hug, and it was actually a sweet moment. He's an unbelievable coach and person in my life. And even that meant a bunch to me. So, looking back on it, once the game starts, it's our guys versus their guys. The kids
Right.
are the ones playing, and we're just doing the best for our own kids. But that was a great day. If we're both in the national championship, it means both programs are doing well, and that all the friends in my coaching tree are succeeding. And not just see Gonzaga there, but to see Grant's success in the tournament and Paul's success in the tournament. You're only as good as your coaching tree, and you want everybody in your family to win.
Yep.
And this whole coaching thing comes down to relationships. And the more your friends succeed, the more opportunities there are for others that you love. And
Yep.
I think that tournament was just great for all the coaches that have helped me in my life.
Yeah, awesome. Well said. And I have a special place for Grant McCaslin in my heart. I don't know if you know this part of my story. He hired me I was already at Abilene Christian when he got the job. I was working he hired me at Abilene Christian, and then he left to go to Baylor about 3 months later. So I got to work with him and recruit, and I felt like we were college roommates. We were always in the car, sleeping in the hotel, sharing the same room. So it's like next thing you know, he goes to Baylor, and like where my roommate's going. Yeah, he's been an instrumental part for me and who he's just always been. And I've been able to come to Baylor and watch practices when he was there too. And Coach Drew is tremendous as well. And obviously my relationship with the Be Ready guys and Tang and AB3, and then Coach Mills and Coach Driscoll, who was instrumental in the early days.
Driscoll's the godfather.
Yeah.
The godfather. And if you ask Coach Tang, the number one mentor in his life and the coach that made the biggest difference, I think he would say Drisk first. So any of our GAs from that time would point to Drisk. And
That's
I know
awesome.
Grant and Paul had a nice run. And, I know Scott and Tang's stability here is pretty special. And Mark Few and Scott have made a big difference in our life. But if you undersold what Drisk did in the beginning here, that first 4 or 5 years, if he wasn't the first, I don't know that this would have gone as well as it did. And there's a ton of guys that are important to me that point to Drisk and say they learned more from him than almost anybody else in their life. So shout out to Coach Driscoll.
Yeah.
He's a wonderful man.
He's a special one, head coach at North Florida. Coach Eli, let's ask some questions about this year's team, who feels like here we are back again, top 2 in the country, just like that. I'll let Eli take it from here.
Yeah, I think one of the main things that you touched on is the developmental aspect of the Baylor program, and how these guys, if they're able to stick for 2 or 3 years, how you're able to take them from maybe a reserve role to then becoming starters. And I think, to be honest, this feels kind of what LJ Cryer has been from playing the reserve role last year to now being the team's leading scorer, and he's averaging upwards of 13 more points per game than he did last season. I'd love to hear about his development and kind of how his skill set has grown and just who he is on and off the floor.
Yeah, I think LJ's doing exactly what we thought he'd do. And that might be awkward for people to hear or for people to understand, but we knew he was this good all along. And the truth is, if that COVID pause didn't happen and we went on a tournament run, then maybe you lose Jared Butler and Maceo Teague. And we kind of expected that to happen. Who could have seen COVID coming? And LJ probably would have played a lot more minutes last year. So he had to step into a situation that wasn't really what he thought it would be. And that's hard on any 18-year-old. And who he is maturity wise and the way he chose to let those guys become his friends and mentors and the way he chose to practice with Davion and Maceo and Jared every day, and hitting that switch instead of holding that against us to become part of that process. There's almost nobody in the world that our guards from last we saw it coming. We feel like his player development when no one was watching last year was special. And there's a knack to scoring the ball that no coach can take credit for. And the reality is that LJ just has that knack. I mean, you put him on the floor, he's a bucket. His real growth has not been in his shooting or his scoring ability. It's been in his ball screen reads, his growth away from his ability to score, his defense, the way he uses his chest, the way he moves his feet, the level of aggression and his strength. LJ's always been a bucket. He scored over 3,000 points in high school. We knew we were getting that. It was the little things that he picked up on over this last year that's really causing him to grow. And even as he's accepted that first guard off the bench role, it hasn't affected him at all. And we're really proud of him. He's going to score a bunch of points in his college career. And he's the perfect example of what a Baylor Bear is. And we're so thankful he chose us.
In terms of some of the guys that you have gotten in the portal, Adam Flagler from Presbyterian and James Akinjo now from being with both Arizona and Georgetown, is there something that your staff in particular looks at when you're trying to get transfers? Are you looking to try to plug and play particular players, or is there a particular skill set that you said with Scott Drew and kind of the players who are Scott Drew players? I think we might have lost him for a second.
We got a little bit of technical difficulties.
Okay.
We'll wait for Coach to come back in. I think he is here now. Coach, sorry about that. We lost you for a second.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, I think. I don't know how much you caught of my question, but just in terms of transfers, getting James Akinjo, getting Adam Flagler, what goes into the process for your staff? Because it's been more strategic of getting a particular player here or there and bringing different guys into your program. Is there a particular process that goes into that, and how do you think you are able to make that work for players coming from different programs?
Yeah, we have a process with our transfer deal, and I think in the beginning, analytics was a big part of it. We try to use predictive analytics as far as who can translate. The second thing is if you can't make a three early on, that was a big tipping point for us with Adam and Maceo. And then I just think our overall need for older guards, if you look at college basketball, I think 11 of the last 12 national champions played 2 point guards and had at least one older guard. So, you just can't go into a season with a younger guard. And then I think we shifted from an Adam and Maceo shooting, winning, maybe being overlooked in high school and having this chip on your shoulder and choosing the right guy character-wise. Into this year, we needed a lead point guard who could take some of Davion's role. And that's why we went older and a different route, because James was a ranked kid who chose UConn and then Georgetown, and he had a different path than Adam and Maceo did. But early on, we were looking for something specific. This past year, we were looking for something specific. But like I said earlier, we treat this thing like we're an NBA draft room. Mm-hmm. And whether it's the analytics or the films or the background checks or the questions we ask or the information, we can take some weaknesses. No player is perfect, and you've got a lot for their weaknesses, but there's got to be a certain tipping point where we're like convinced that you as a person is going to fit here, and that your prior success isn't going to keep you from letting us change the things that we want to change. Because at the end of the day, you're not renting us; you're becoming a Baylor Bear. And I think a lot of transfers they're disappointed in a place, so they're trying to go to the next place so they can fix it. And they go to that program, wanting that program to meet their needs to the point where if they don't, then they just get mad again. Mm-hmm. We're trying to avoid that player at all costs. We will not take that kid. If he's coming to us because he's mad or he wants to fix something or he had losing habits at the last place, but he had good numbers, we're avoiding that. So our background checks trump almost everything. There's not a perfect science to it, and I'm not going to tell you all the details of it, but I think that kind of gives a picture. Right. Analytically, role, who they are as a person, and then are they going to really let us make them into a Baylor Bear instead of just renting us so they can get what they want out of college basketball, which we think is a real problem right now. We're trying to avoid it.
Yeah, I love that idea of. I actually heard another coach say that here recently. Same kind of concept of like, you're not going to rent us. You said that, which was even better, but he said the players are kind of just going to places for the year, trying to get what they can get out of it. He didn't use the word rent, but I love that. Couple more before we let you go. Coach Drew, let's talk about him for a second specifically. He's played zone early in his career. He's recruited 5 stars. He's done it with high school guys that were under recruited, like Torian Waller Prince. He's done it with guys who have redshirted in his program. Now he's done the transfer formula. What's the young man's name? I'm drawing a blank. They got all the buckets. The lefty point guard is a JUCO player. I'm drawing a blank on his name from CSI. Really good.
Pierre Jackson. He wasn't lefty.
Oh yeah, it wasn't lefty. Okay, sorry. Pierre Jackson. So he's done it with JUCO. He's done it with high school. He's done it with 5 stars. He's done it with no stars. He's done it with zone. He's done it with man. What is it about Coach Drew that allows him to be able to adapt and change and have this elite level success outside of the things that maybe you've already said? What do you think that is that helps him be so elite at that?
Yeah, I think you just said the word adapt. I don't think that all coaches want to adapt. I think a lot believe that they've got to figure it out. And if their players aren't doing it, it's their players' fault and they've got to correct it. And there's a certain humility about Scott. If we make a mistake, it's our mistake. If we lose, he goes to the press conference and he says, we have to do a better job. I have to do a better job. I'm going to change. It's on me. And whether it was because his dad was a coach and he grew up in that environment, or he saw his brother play in the NBA, or he had to go through that first 4 or 5 years here where they were just losing a bunch of games.
Right.
I don't know that I've met a coach who does a better job of learning how to take personal responsibility for the actions that are going on in his program. He's so quick to say, this is my fault. I could have done better. Or, hey, that worked for that personnel. That was great when we had 3, 6, 9 guys at the forward spot. We'll go zone.
Right.
But, we're smaller. We're playing 3 guards. Let's go man. A lot of guys won't do that. Maybe they'll get mad at their assistants, or they just say they did a bad job in recruiting, or they picked the wrong kids. He never says anything is wrong. He always looks for what's right.
Right.
And I think early in his career, maybe people thought his optimism was fake, even his personality. And he can't be that happy all that time. And
can't be that positive.
Yeah. I mean, you can. That's fine if you want to critique a man you don't know. That's on your own time. There's nothing we can do about that. I can just tell you, working for him. I'm not sure there's a better guy at admitting his own faults and saying, I'm going to fix it. I can work this out. We can make Baylor great. We don't need to come to Baylor, be good, and then go pick another program. We can just make this one the best one.
Right.
And he's done that by self-criticism. He's open to saying, what can I do better? What can we do better? It's actually a great place to work because you can address your own weaknesses with no fear.
Yeah.
And you get to the point where you don't blame the players and the players don't blame you. You're looking for a solution.
Right.
And there's problem-based people and there's solution-based people.
Yep.
And we're fighting for solutions. And so Jerome, Alvin, myself, the rest of the staff.
Got just a little bit of technical difficulty there. I think Coach will be back. We're almost done with the interview. I was just going to ask him a funny question. But, man, Coach J doesn't get enough credit, and it's so cool to be able to get a chance to hear from another voice on the staff that you just don't normally hear much from or get his perspective. And, I'll let you kind of take it before he comes back in and we close it out.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's really cool to hear the perspective. And we've talked about on this show quite a bit how it goes beyond the players, it goes beyond the head coach. The assistants play such a huge role here in whether it's scouting, whether it's development, whether it's, just maintaining the chemistry on the team. And all of that has to be checked. Every single box has to be checked to win a national title. There's no exception. You don't luck your way into winning a national championship, let alone in a season where you're dealing with the biggest distraction of all, which is COVID-19, which Baylor went through 3 separate times and still bounced back. So it speaks volumes to what this staff accomplished last season, and it's great to hear that perspective, because it's not often you get to talk to a national champion and someone who played a significant role in that, and obviously John has and continues to do so, and to still be undefeated. Obviously, they have the formula and they have this thing rolling in the right direction to keep that ship moving.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, we all know how much depth goes in college basketball. I think sometimes on the media side, people may not. But I love to hear him talk about their evaluation process almost being NBA draft like, and how depth and how much depth teams go into for that draft process. Them taking the same thing with their program. I love to hear him kind of talk about that. And then, again, I think Coach Drew does not get the credit as a coach, even though he's won a national championship. So I love him kind of sharing that. We got Coach back. We'll get one last question from him and let him roll.
I got all these bars. I don't know what's going on. It says I'm full, but
sometimes the enemy just tries to knock us down, even though because we're doing too much good. So
yeah.
So Coach was you were talking about Coach Drew and the solution, finding solutions. He kind of has this way. Have you ever watched Ted Lasso, the show?
Yeah, you're not the first guy to bring up that comparison. He had never even heard of the show, but people just kept tweeting that he's Ted Lasso, especially like our fans. Yes. The comparison got to the point where I think he had to sit down and watch the show. That's a great show. So
what does he say about the show? Does he like the show? Does he not like it?
No, who doesn't like that show? I mean, that's what show's hysterical. And there's a certain optimism about it that I think culturally people are shocked by. Like, how can a man think like that? And I think that is Scott. Like, how can a guy be that positive? How can I take over a program that there was a murder charge and turn it into a winner? And why would he stay there? That
champion, not just a winner.
Why would he stay there that long? And he can't really be that happy. And so probably the same stuff Ted Lasso would have gone through in real life is what Scott has dealt with in his career. So I don't think they're exactly the same, but there's enough comparison.
No doubt.
That I think even as Scott's gotten deeper into this deal, people have begun to really believe that he is who he says he is, and what he believes in matters. And he's a Hall of Fame coach, and any debate about that is behind him at this point. And you can call him Ted Lasso, you can call him whatever you want, but you're gonna have to call him a national champion for the rest of his life. And
hey, you've been hanging out with Coach. It sounds like his line right there.
No. Like, I mean, and we're happy for him. I think at Gonzaga, I got to take part in Mark's first Final Four, and at Baylor, I've gotten to take part in Scott's first Final Four. These guys do so much to carry the burden of our families. And they work so hard, and they do so many things that people don't even understand that 80% of their job is anything in basketball. They've got to be a CEO and take care of us, and all that those two guys have done for me and my family. To be part of that with both of them was so sweet, and he deserves to be a Hall of Famer and called a national champion. And I know we're goofing around about it because it's Ted Lasso, but I'm just from my own heart, he's a good man.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. So as we talked about Ted Lasso and how great coach is, give us one funny story about anything Baylor Bears or anything your career that you can share with us before we let you go. We like to try to lighten it up at the end, give a little humor, let people know the other side of the coaches that come on.
Okay. I don't know. I'll go something before my time here.
Yeah.
My first game coaching overseas for Athletes in Action. I coached against a pro team. I won't tell you the country. And I introduced myself to the head coach, and didn't know English, looked at me blank. I was told he was one of the better players in the history of the country. And I was excited to meet him, and he didn't say a word. He barely even looked at me. So I thought, oh, there's a language barrier. This is going to be normal if you're going to coach internationally. Certain people just aren't going to know English.
Right.
So we get in this really close game. We get 3 straight offensive rebounds to take the lead. I think like we were down 5, and we went up by a point, and they expected the refs to cheat because I was an American and they weren't. And so the coach walks out on the floor and he starts swearing at the ref in English. All right. I'm like, I looked at him.
Like, wait a minute.
I said, I thought you didn't know English. And then he started coming at me and swearing in English. And I said, all right, now all of a sudden you know all the words, don't you? And I'll say 40% of the words he shared started with F. So you can only imagine how that went. But there was no big fist fight, nothing. It was all fake basketball fights. But I just thought that was a great way to start my international career. And
No doubt.
it grabbed a hold of my heart. And I think we'd probably be coaching overseas still if it wasn't for my son. But God's got a plan, and this is where we're meant to be. And
Amen.
my time overseas really shaped my career. And I know I'm a little bit an outsider from college basketball because of how I started, but people have really given me a chance, and I'm forever thankful. But I'll never forget the guy who pretended he didn't know English.
I love it, Coach. I love it. I'm so glad you came on today, Coach. We really appreciate the time, and we know you're preparing to do big things again there at Baylor, and we just appreciate you taking the time and letting us get to know you and letting more people out there get to know your story and a little bit more of the insight into Baylor. So thanks so much. And
man, thank you. Thanks for what you're doing for the game and what you're doing for us. I know you support Alvin and Jerome. I appreciate you having me on, but let's always help those two guys out. Those are two of the best.
No doubt about it, Coach. And then next time we connect, I got to tell you the story about how Coach Brooks helped me with my newborn daughter, who is now almost 10 months. So
okay.
We all have some relatability there, and so I'll be picking your brain on how to be the best dad to her too. So thanks so much, Coach. Keep up the good work and good luck.
Yeah,
thanks so much.
Have a good day. Talk to you guys soon.
All right, we'll let Eli shut us down as always.
Yeah, it was really cool getting John's perspective on this, and winning the national title, and just kind of what.
Eli, I think you're still on your headphones.
You got me? Can you hear me?
Now. We got you now.
Gotcha. Yeah, it just died. I had to switch over. Like I said earlier, you don't luck your way into winning a national title, and I think that doesn't even start in November. That starts way back years and years, and John spoke to that too with his connection with Mark Few and that Gonzaga staff, and clearly they haven't yet won a national title, but they have that national title sort of, and I know culture is overused, but they're competing for national titles every single season. There's no doubt about that, and clearly so much goes into that with how coaches treat their assistants, with how the staff treats their players, and which players you bring to your program. I thought that was really fascinating when John spoke about the transfers that they look at and how you look at both on-court skill set and also off-court maturity. And those are, if you check both of those boxes, you're probably in a pretty good spot. So he had a great perspective, and clearly he's been to several different spots around the country and outside of the country too. That's helped mold the coach that he has become and will continue to be. But so we've seen it so many times in past years in college basketball. The national title winning team loses 3 starters, 4 starters, which Baylor did this offseason, and then they kind of go into a slump. Well, Baylor's only gotten better, and they're undefeated, and one of their guys who was averaging 3 points a night last season is now their leading scorer. So that in itself tells you what you need to know about the Baylor program. It's now one of the best in the country, and I fully expect it to do so long as Scott Drew and these assistants are there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and we'll talk more about Baylor specifically on the show today when we get to heat check and the undefeated teams. But yeah, I think it's just such a cool thing. Like college basketball, there's so many great coaches and people that have such unique stories. Like he literally coached athletes in action and then coached overseas professionally. And next thing you know, he's at Baylor. Next thing you know, he's at Gonzaga. Next thing you know, he's back at Baylor. It's like, you just never know how God can orchestrate or how things will fall in place for your career. And again, can't say enough about Coach Jay. I look forward to getting to know him more. And I'm just so glad that everybody else gets a chance to get to know more of his story and who he is. And just more insight to the Baylor Bears program, because it is a unique thing to be able to do what they're doing. And I think it's special for us to be able to witness this time capsule. We may never see something like what this Baylor story is right now, being where it started with, like you said, a murder that had a coach lose his job. They had all these penalties and scholarship. I mean, they had all this stuff to overcome. And felt like no way is that place ever going to be a respectable place athletically. And here we are with the football team winning the national a Big 12 championship after they've overcome some stuff as well. And then now you got Baylor basketball winning a national championship, and now they're back in the top 2 in the country conversation. And the crazy part, he talks about the development, but I think there's no clear-cut favorite for a national champion this year like it was last year. We've had a new number 1 team. It feels like middle of the week every week since the season has started. And now here we are. Baylor is right there at the top, and it wouldn't surprise me if they were right there in the national championship and Final Four again. And then once you get that far, it's anybody's ball game. So excited to talk more about them later. Coach Jay was awesome, and season 2, heat check already bringing the heat.
Yeah, no, we're off to a good start here. We got a player, got a coach, and best is yet to come. So this is a great way to start things off.
Yeah.